It's time for another episode of ApocaCrypto. Good to see you guys. We have a special guest. Kalina Lux is in the house. I've called this episode Wildcard because Kalina and I had some email issues where our emails weren't going through. And so I have no idea where she's coming from, what her perspective is, what she thinks. And it's like a mystery box. This is why I preach so much about the magic of mystery. And we have it in the studio today, and I could not have planned it better. So there we go. Before we say hello to her, I'd like to welcome my compadre Josh. Josh, it's great to see you, my friend. How goes it?
Good, good. Always good to see you. And usually we do this radio style, but since we've got the beautiful Kalina with us, I didn't want to leave her out there just to have only her out in the picture box there. So things are good on my front, man. I mean, I've got proud dad moments with my little guy taking his floaties off and literally jumping into the deep end without floaties on, not giving a whoop, and doing a little 360 spin like he's been doing it all his life. So,
Wow.
yeah.
The symbolism, huh? I love it. That's
Mm.
fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
We will do an update on the market then after. Let's go ahead and introduce her. Kalina Lux, welcome to ApocaCrypto. Good to have you here.
Hi, James. Hi, Josh. Nice to meet you guys. I'm a big fan of your work. Josh, this is my first time kind of seeing your stuff, but I'm very happy to be here.
Well, good to have you. And I would have my camera on too, but every time I hit start, it says camera failed, and I don't want to have to reboot. And you guys know what I look like anyway. But I'm visually, I am there. My face is there. In fact, I should probably just stick the Dojo Earth logo over my face, and then that'll kind of equate it there any better. So, Kalina, you are based New York area, is that right?
I'm in Puerto Rico, deep, deep in the mountains, 100% off grid in the mountains.
Wow, how did I get so far away from that? But this is part of the mystery. So that's fantastic. So your reception sounds really well. This is what you meant when you said I'm crossing some sort of body of water. I forget the exact term. I automatically pictured Manhattan or Long Island for some reason. I don't know why I even went there. So
Well, I've never been to New York, but I live up in the mountains. So anytime I do an interview, I have to come to the beach house where my mom lives because she's got really fast internet.
right on. Well, what a wonderful way to embrace the internet. Well, we're glad to have you. Let's do an update on the markets. Any ears to the tracks? Anything you guys want to say? What you think is happening right now? When I say the market, I really mean the entire fashion plasma of what we even believe in too. So don't feel like you have to limit it just to those things. Josh, you want to take this first?
Yeah. Quick update from me. The market's doing some interesting things, and I've been actively talking about how aptly named ApocaCrypto. Right, we're in the middle of this apocalypse, this unveiling of some pretty bloody times right now in the crypto space, and I'm still trying to actively short things, but what we're seeing right now is the tail, right? The whip of the creature right now is whipping up, which is good. But I would just give caution to everyone who's out there who's thinking about like getting back in whole hog. I don't think we're done yet with the apocalyptic part of what's
Jesus, you're
happening
killing
right now
me,
with
Josh.
crypto.
God,
I know,
all you
brother.
fucking
I
do is
know.
come in here with this stuff.
Bad news. I'm just bad news bears. But at the same time, like, let's not get overzealous. It's nice to see a little bit of green in the market, but I'm not buying quite yet. Not
Right
buying
on.
quite yet.
Right on. Clint, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so had our emails actually gone through to each other, I would have titled this the crypto psyop. So in the spirit of the crypto psyop, I think that right now, obviously, we're under bearish pressure. And I personally love recessions, bear markets, because that's when you really make good money. And so I don't know, I'm kind of the reverse. Everybody sees doom and gloom, and I just see opportunities. It's been thrilling. Yeah, we get like little bitty artificial psyop pumps here and there, but let's just like, I don't know, for me, I just want to get comfortable and cozy. This is the time for me to really focus on building projects that are going to preempt all of the future upcoming problems that we see looming on the horizon of, what they want to do, right? If you're, I guess for the nature of this talk, we can agree to be in the aperture mostly. I love your concepts on that, James. Of the narrative, right, with the social credit score system and all those things that we've been marched towards. So that's what I'm going to speak on today. And occasionally we can pop up in the higher, larger apertures and talk there. But for the most part, like, that's my vantage point that I'm here to share with you guys today.
Right on. Well, I'd like for you to elaborate, please, on why you use the term psyop. I think that's a very interesting concept. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I guess I think that in order to paint that picture accurately, I just want to give you and your audience just a teeny little background on me and why I think the way I do
Great.
and why I perceive it that way. So, me personally, I woke up, so to speak, by having my aperture blasted wide open in September 11th with the, fall of the Twin Towers. That was my first taste at Psyop.
Mm-hmm.
And I had read a little book prior to that described how, they were going to fake this situation and it was going to be all done. This was like 6 months before September 11th. And me, I was so young. I was just like, wow, what a weird book. But when that happened, like, everything just went, opened up for me. And so I've been very lucky to position myself and my community members for success simply by preempting these so-called psyops, right? And the reason why I would call it the crypto psyop is because when we look out into the world of crypto, right now, everybody is drinking the transparency chain Kool-Aid, which just equates to surveillance chain. And I am ecstatic to share with you, your listeners, and of course, my audience who hasn't heard me speak on this yet, because I come from a different background. I have Tempus Aquaria, which is now, you guys don't know anything about me, but this is great. I created a church to serve vaccine exemptions, which I've provided to 1,500 people roughly worldwide who has been able to keep their jobs. And now they're able to fly from Canada and travel throughout Europe. And so, I've been very lucky and blessed to preempt these kinds of problems that collectively or affectionately we'll call it they, right? The powers that were or seek to be or whatever. I've been very lucky to position myself with solutions to that. And so after I solved the vaccine exemption problem, I've been 100% focused on trying to get our communities set up for success when the social credit score system gets kicked on, if it ever gets there. And it's just been really super thrilling. So what I mean by crypto psyop is that 99.9% of all the cryptocurrencies, if you can even call them that, I personally don't think you can, because crypto, which we'll get to, comes from encryption. And if you're not encrypted, you can't really be called crypto. You are a digital currency, the CBDCs, right? So I look out into the world and I see all these little Bitcoin bros like, oh yeah, blah, blah. And they're all about transparency. And their argument is, it's so cute, we got to keep these governments accountable. We got to put them on public ledgers so they don't, screw us over. And I'm just thinking, sweetheart, what makes you think they will ever play by the rules that they set out for their plebeians, for their chattel? They'll never, right? And that's why I believe there's going to be a certain subset, a very small subset of us who are intelligent enough to foresee that there is going to be a need for something different, AKA truly fungible currencies. And for your listeners that don't know, fungible just means private, cannot be tracked. Bitcoin is not fungible. I don't care. Like, try and prove me wrong. I'm sure your listeners know that, for example, if I were to buy something shady with, Bitcoin, and then I sold my Bitcoin to you, you now have my Bitcoin. Right. So they can track that back and be like, "Ooh, that's dirty. That's not worth anything here."
You mean
So
kind of like the Russian billionaires, right? Like right now, all the assets are being seized all across Europe, right? And how are they being seized? Because they're trackable. And if they're trackable, then you know who's who and what's what, and you can penalize people in ways that we've never been able to contemplate penalizing people before, right? There's a very special kind of penalty that's been invented you could call it the ledger, but really it comes in earlier than that because we had this CBDCs when we had an ATM card, when we had everyone using the same petrodollar is already that CBDC. It's the system is already been normalized in that way is what I'm trying to say. So
Mhm. Yeah, well said. Well said. Exactly.
so you believe in privacy tokens? Is that I guess that's would be part of where you're at, right?
Yes. So I am 100% on the fungible privacy ecosystem train. Like all of those. In fact, I have prepared bullets. I don't think you got them. I sent them about maybe an hour ago. Let me show you here. I got them here. Yeah. So I'm going to be speaking a little bit more. I saw your last episode with the Pirate Chain people,
Awesome.
and I wanted to just kind of introduce a couple other privacy protocols and
Great.
weigh in some pros and cons and speak about obviously the project that I feel extremely relieved that it exists and very bullish on, which is Dero, which I'll talk about at the end. But yeah, so I guess, yeah, I think we kind of went over so far that, in my opinion, and from my research, 99% of crypto, if you can even call it that, is just a wet dream with surveillance chains. And I love that you're doing a show that's kind of focused on this because I really think like our communities need to know. Because I'm a fan of your work. I'm a fan of Crow, and I know that some people really resist crypto, and they come down to like the etymology of it in Crow's case. I did an extensive deep dive into the etymology of crypto. It actually comes from calypto, and R's, as you guys know, R's and L's are interchangeable previously. So calypto used to mean a hidden cave where you store your treasure.
Hmm.
And of course, they changed it in the future to where you bury your dead, but that's because the dead were buried with treasure. So I personally don't find the etymology to be offensive. Of course, in my generation, we were inundated with negative terminology regarding crypto,
Yeah.
right?
Well, the dead used to be. We used to consider our dead treasure. We used to actually. That's how we viewed our dead. We venerated them as treasure, which is why we went to great lengths to protect them by covering them up and not letting other people or rodents or anything else just come and do or even witness even to witness the dead is a special connection you have. So yeah, absolutely. This just happened today where someone responded saying, well, think about it, man, crypto, that's just like fat people that eat bread that are dead, so therefore crypto's bad. That was his argument. And it reminds me that the people with swords are coming to kill us, so we must reject the use of steel to defend our village. This is the adage that most will take, right? Which is, swords are bad, so we can't have any steel. And if I catch any of you guys forging things or using any sort of strong tensile strength, well, you're in trouble, man, because you are bringing evil into this village. And meanwhile, the people with swords are coming and they're slow. CBDCs is the slowest moving predator you've ever seen. So we're having all this time to prepare for it. And while you and I and Josh are forging these weapons, people are like, you guys are evil, man. You guys are bad. You guys better stop using this forge. Blacksmith, that's witchcraft. And it's funny because that's what blacksmiths were viewed as. They were viewed as this witchcraft type special class that both could be trusted and could not be trusted, much like this Cyclops figure from history. I'm getting way off track here. But yeah, there's a beautiful power in the ability to cover something. And I think a lot of people are intrinsically afraid of losing that key, which makes them reject having the responsibility of even encryption itself. It becomes a monster that can really bite back, and they don't want that power right now.
Let me just add something really quick too,
Please.
on this notion about crypto conspiracy, right, and being used against us and for us in different ways that people can think about it, right? James, you and I chat a little bit about this offline between our episodes. I stumbled upon an old article from, I think it was 1921, where Henry Ford was actually talking about changing the system of money. And he said that we need to get off the gold-based system. And you may be thinking, well, yeah, the bankers got us off a gold-based system into fiat. Look how well that's done. But what did he say? We need to move from gold to an energy-based system. Like Bitcoin potentially, right? Which is an energy-based system, needs to be finite in value, right? So it has a definitive amount of how much it is. It's not inflationary, it's deflationary, and some other things about it as well. And he was actually very critical about the banking cartel. Now, why is this coming into the forefront of our purview right now? Why is that being served up to us? Probably because they want to use Bitcoin against us, right? And talk about how this is the savior, coin. But I think at the crux of it, and Kalina, it sounds like you might have some agreement with this too, is, there are ways that it can be used against you if you're foolish and you don't see what it is or what they're trying to do. But on the other hand, there are some really good aspects of crypto and ways that it actually can help us extricate ourselves from this fiat system.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the idea of energy based. There are right now in the Dero ecosystem, I see a lot of people discussing how to create stable coins, and there's some really incredible ideas going on there. But, I do think that it can be the exact thing that we need to get ourselves out of the grips of, the financial tyranny. And if you think about how long this has been going on, we can actually begin to see the Psyop unfold even more so. I used to come from the background that Bitcoin was made. I used to believe that Bitcoin was like made by the CIA and it was there to enslave us or whatever. And I was still trading and enjoying the market, but I really kind of thought that until I really did a deep dive into privacy coins and particularly Dero. When you research the history, which I'm ecstatic to share with you guys today, when you research the history of how crypto, which came from the word encryption, came about, you'll get a totally different story. And so while I do have a working hypothesis that potentially, somebody or some, mathematician and cryptologist, I don't know if that's a word, created the codes that we have now. And then it might have been taken over in certain aspects of the Bitcoin, chain turned off, like BSV, and then they switched, I do think that could have been co-opted for the powers that were for their purposes. But I actually think, and I don't think anybody has this belief system but me, but from my research, I think that the people who had been fighting this war for encryption, true encryption, actually psyoped the government. And I'll tell you how and why. I'll get into that. But I believe that they knew that would happen. And so they gave them this piece of technology that really can't do much. Like, yes, on BSV, I think it has the potential for smart contracts. And I guess its computing power is quite high from what I understand, but I'm not an expert in that. Actually, I'm not an expert in anything crypto. I'm like a spiritual healer. That's where my background comes from. But it's a great crossover. And I think it's really important for us these days to not only learn about this stuff, because it's really essential that every person does their own research. And you can't know where we're going unless you know where we've come from. And so that's why I want to get into a little bit of the history of the cypherpunks. Have you guys talked about that on your show yet?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So in 1977, there was a group of mathematicians and cryptologists that discovered a piece of technology in terms of encryption that was so advanced that even the governments could not tap into it. They could not break it. It was a form of cipher text. So encryption essentially means anything written in cipher text. Anything written in plain text might have privacy protocols, but it is actually not encrypted. So moving forward, these people eventually traded their stuff, and one of them, they tried to take them to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ended up backing off because essentially one of them had created a encrypted chatting app. And they were trying to bring him under the jurisdiction of war crimes because they said, oh, well, what if somebody overseas is planning an attack on us? Well, these people really went to the depths to fight for our rights. To this day, we became this close to being in a world where using computer code for encryption, true encryption without a backdoor, didn't exist or would have been criminalized. And how they got out of the trial and how they actually had the Supreme Court vote in their favor to decriminalize this. They printed the encryption codes on t-shirts. They got them tattooed on their bodies. And eventually, which was like kind of like the nail in the coffin, was they got I can't remember which, some school, I think it was MIT, to print it out in a book, the whole encryption protocol, and send it overseas and sell it overseas. And those people went to the Supreme Court. They said, oh, I have the encryption codes tattooed on my body. Am I not allowed to travel to Europe? Oh, I'm wearing a t-shirt. Can I not go to China? And then when they had an MIT book printed and sent overseas, that's when the Supreme Court went, wow, okay, there is nothing that we can do to stop true encryption without government backdoors from getting out to the masses. We can't criminalize it. We're going to back off, but we're going to try with all of our might to basically corral it and control it. And this is what I think happened. And this is why I think that by the time we released the Bitcoin protocols in, I think, 2008 or something, those people were already well aware of the struggles and well aware of how the government or the powers that were would react to such a thing. And actually, yeah, I lost my train of thought on that, but I think you guys can kind of pick up what I'm throwing down here.
Well, yeah, I think that it turns out a lot of time the powers that be really just turn out to be a conglomeration of useful idiots just competing to either control or constrict or to stop and suppress or to profit from or to liberate. All of that mixed together ends up with just a general reaction to things. We have that now. Some of the smartest minds in the world are convinced and dead set sold that crypto is evil and we must reject it at all costs. That is an inflammation that's stopping progress, from stopping us from utilizing this technology in any way. It's going to take a lot of work before that happens, before that's even tapped in. And because of that, it gives early bird access, basically has always been the system of piracy. And government is just corporate piracy. So it would make sense that that the fashion of the day, the technology of the day, is not actually guided by government as much as it's utilized and leached onto by the government itself. And you have a system of fan base that basically is just lazy and just wants to tap into whatever the technology, whatever the fashion is of the day, and just claim, yes, this is profitable. And that'll always happen. You even since the .com, since long before the .com, since computers themselves, there's always been not new markets that have formed, but the potential on the idea of a possible inkling of a clue of maybe a market coming along. That inkling of this potential is all it takes to create finance, to create money flow, to create power base, to create systemic integration. This is why everyone puts Facebook on their cartons of milk. Why is the milk company putting Facebook on there? You have integration, but the integration is more of a survival mechanism, not necessarily even a conscious form of they interacting in the world. This is why the Rebel Alliance will always have an advantage with speed. And this is why the Rebel Alliance will always lose when it's held back by the fear from other rebels of new technology, right? Guys, we can build a life star. What the fuck's a life star? It's like a Death Star, but it's like opposite, man. It's this powerful, weapon of love. We cannot build a lifestyle, dude. Guys, you got to trust me. This is going to work. No, no, this is a trick. You're working for them. You're one of them. You're bad, James. This is bad. And this reaction is exactly why the empire tends to kick a lot of ass. Because the empire, all it has to do is just slowly open his mouth and just take 2 steps forward. And rebels will naturally just fall into the mouth and go down into the belly screaming that they are the alliance. This is part of this process. And I really was more false. I was falsely optimistic at the beginning of crypto because I thought, who in their right mind would dare to stand in line with the petrodollar and turn their backs to me, and when I say me, this is a computer programmer who has utilized encryption in his own life. Is just part of what we do. I've been salting passwords on Unix backends for ages. And that is the most basic, vital part of the key system. If you're going to run a web server, you're going to have to know how to encrypt. And you're never, ever, ever, ever going to want to trust someone else with your salt. This intrinsic, what do you use to call it? Your key of keys is what it is. And it's a scary prospect. And many rebels fear it so much that they end up working for the empire the entire time. This is the Psyop that you're speaking about, Kalina. This is the Psyop that
Yeah.
you're really talking about the true power of is that it's our inherent fear. It's not their inherent predatorship, right? It's a much more in our face kind of system that we face.
Honestly, it's an offer to contract. They tell us so far in advance. I knew about this in 2001, right? They took so long to do the whole, injection thing. I thought they'd never do it. After 20 years, I was like, geez, maybe those were just conspiracies that I spent my whole last 2 decades, researching and preempting. But I mean, and that's just from this vantage point, right? If you talk about like from a higher perspective, I think we know that we are constantly telling this divine construct how to interact with us and what to do in that regard. And I love it, right? Because who doesn't need a very good adversary? So I'm grateful to the powers that were for creating this opportunity to have an adventure.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting.
No, go ahead. I just wanted to say we should coin that term, the powers that were. We should. I really like that term. We should call the powers that be the powers that were. Just an offshoot there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's all yours. Take it. I don't even know who I got it from, but it's just floating around. It's free for the taking. But yeah, I fell for the crypto psyop too. And of course, right, that's the first step. You get in there and out. And the thing is like when you go on YouTube and you see all these crypto influencers shilling their shitcoin, none of them talk about the history of crypto. They don't talk about the cypherpunks because they don't know. And that for me as like a mind that really kind of leans towards everybody's an agent. You're just psyoping me, right? Because I've been psyop since forever. It's that imprint that keeps, right, like programming reality. But it's now I have made it my bitch, luckily. I love it. And in this case, when you don't know where you've been, right? If you go back and read Bitcoin's original white paper, and if you read the chat forums, prior to Bitcoin, and you actually read what Satoshi and other characters that predated, Satoshi, like Thankful for Today, they're not calling for a transparent surveillance system to keep the powers that be, that were accountable. They are calling for true encryption. And it's interesting that you mention how people will just, shit on somebody else's idea. I believe the character that I talked about, Thankful for Today, how they actually had this brilliant idea of, basically, I think they were involved with the predecessor to Monero. And they had this brilliant idea for creating a extremely advanced level blockchain where the blockchain itself is mandatorily encrypted, something that we've never seen in crypto till today. And with all these opportunities to have private smart contracts. Right now, Ethereum, everybody is drinking the Ethereum ERC20 Kool-Aid. And it's pretty cute. I was there. I mean, my first token I launched, I tried to make it an ERC20 and but it didn't feel right to me. well, mostly because of the gas fees, but something inside kept pinging like, this ain't it, girl. And the more I studied and researched and I came across, Monero, Pirate Chain, Dero, a little word just stuck in my head. The word Dero just kept like reverberating in me. I work differently than most people. I work in reverse. Source gives me a little like hint, like a little bird, like, hey, psst, check this out. And I'm just like, okay, Source, I know I trust you enough. I'm all in. And then I research and then I discover, wow, you really hooked me up there. So that's how I came into the world of privacy coins. But it is interesting because when you read what they were talking about way, way back in the day, they weren't saying to be transparent. And I get the integrity that people want to have with that. But the fact of the matter is, the sooner that we can get over our tribalism, which I believe is full force, the Psyop, because right now we've got Monero people fighting Pirate Chain, fighting Dero. You guys, we're the only things we've got. Like, we're the only things that we have to help our cause. So once you really realize and internalize that tribalism is part of the Psyop, divide and conquer, easiest, oldest trick in the book, save for maybe Hegelian dialect. So with that being said, I wanted to briefly touch on layer ones, layer twos, and surveillance chain. So for the purposes of this conversation and how I speak in general, 99.9% of everything, of all digital currencies, what I'm going to call them because they're not crypto, because they're not encrypted, are surveillance chain. And there might be usage for that. Sure, if you want to brag that you have an NFT, whatever. I learned the hard way about surveillance chain. One time I was in a crypto class, like I signed up for a program, and the teacher was real shady, and he only wanted to help like his super rich students because he was literally like front running. He would shill his coins and tell us, oh, everybody buy in this or go stake this, which staking, I mean, I'm late to this game, but staking is a complete bullshit little Ponzi scheme. Like, why do it, right? You have to profit off the people in front of you and you get left with the bag oftentimes. If you don't know where the income or like the profit is coming from, it's coming from you. That's a little free tip. So flashing forward my story, I was asking him for help once, like, oh, well, how do I do this with the staking? He had us stake all of our, our crypto that we had earned with him. He would give us deals that would like profit us. And then he would just like rug pull us on his own calls. And one time I gave him my wallet address, but on public transparency surveillance chain, you can trace everything. So he knew all of a sudden all of my assets, and very much that was reflected in his actions. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
Astonishing. So yeah, anyways.
Yeah, you can build an entire profile from somebody. And all you got to do is just click on a hash. Just click on that hash and there it all is. It's valuable information. It really does help you to determine your strategy when it comes to dealing with that person, which is what this shill, what we're calling the shill part of this is really just the same financial markets. This is just how they do it. Tribalism, I believe, actually is part of the stainless alchemical process where it's necessary because the tribalism tests the loyalty that each project has. And the more you test the loyalty of the project, the more the investor is able to determine how much belief they want to invest in the same kind of thing. So it gets very cutthroat, but that cutthroat thing is, I think, ultimately ends up being a constructive process. Our chain is I think really good at this. Pirate Chain is really good at this. There is a camaraderie and brothermanship inside that libertalia that they've created that I think really does give the token the value. A deeper kind of value, a more spiritual value, to be honest with you. It's a more chronically charged kind of project. I'm not trying to say that's the only one, by the way. It's just that when you're in the boards and you're looking in Discord, you feel that vibe very strongly inside those different groups. And that really ultimately, I think, guides more investors than would even could ever be honest with themselves about to even say that that's actually why I like this chain. It's because of the way it feels. And I personally think that's a technology, by the way. I think this is a good thing. And the more honest we are with where we have our parthenia, where we put our beliefs, the more we're able to see the true matrix of this world. I mean, matrix in a good way, that all of this is built off our belief. And instead of denying it, let's embrace that stuff. Let's see how deep our beliefs can go, you know?
Let me also add there too that each of these is going to have their own place, right? So this idea of tribalism may be good as it's kind of honing in each of these different technologies and making them stronger to be competitive with one another. But they can also work in harmony, right? And so you mentioned Monero. Well, little hat tip, little plug for anybody who's listening, especially if you're thinking about how do I get from fiat into these things without being known and seen, localmonero.co. And I don't know, Kalina, you may or may not have heard of that before, but localmonero.co. Okay, guys, localmonero.co. That would be how you would maybe on-ramp yourself. Because one of the biggest difficulties that people have is, how do I get my money that's in my bank into crypto and then not be tracked the entire way? Well, you can't unless you maybe rewind 30 seconds and just listen to what I said a couple of times and go there. There really aren't too many ways to get on without all of the stuff that you have to go through, right?
Right.
And I'm being vague purposely because I know this is out on different platforms.
No, it's great. Actually, that segues a little bit into one of the projects that I'm currently working on. I have a legal and lawful workaround to buying crypto sans KYC. And you'll be able, once I have solved a few problems with that in terms of the code, because I am not a developer, I'm learning as fast as I can, because my background is obviously I studied the last 2 years, thankful to the Psyop with COVID. I'm grateful to them for bringing that to me, because I just went so deep on law and, law for living men and women and sovereignty and autocracy. I've actually created like my own jurisdiction, an ecclesiastic jurisdiction. Anyways, I'm not here to talk about that though, but so yeah, stay tuned for my project. I'm very thrilled about that, but it's going to take a little bit of time for me to work it out, but it's already there. But yeah, that's a great one. I like that. The local Monero. Yeah. Okay. So we went over surveillance chain and transparency chain, and I'll talk about layer 2s, you guys. So a lot of the venture capitalists that we see, there's some different groups, right? They have their benefits, I'm sure. And they also are just like down to ride the wave of whatever's popular to like make that money. Do they care about you in the end? I don't know. Do you trust a cryptocurrency that comes out and says, oh, we're a privacy coin, except they're actually on layer 2? And oh, and by the way, if you're using the normal types of, Coinbase, KuCoin, whatever, you can't actually access that privacy option, Zcash. So, we've got some things like that with the ZK snarks that are so, infamous, but in fact, like on Zcash, it is very challenging unless you know what you're doing. You cannot actually create a private transaction. And at that, it's layer 2. So I didn't really understand the concept of layer 2 until a friend of mine in the Dero ecosystem told me. It's like an addict, right? So if you have a house, let's say I'm in this house right now and it's completely wiretapped. We've got Alexa cameras from every angle and they are studying my every move. And I'm supposed to do only this one task. If I deviate from this one task, boom, everything, my social credit score gets wrecked, everything, my bank accounts get frozen, of which I'm sure you guys know about Peter Schiff with his latest fiasco with getting his bank account frozen and all his clients. Anyway, I'll talk about that later. But so that's essentially what a layer 2 is your whole house and all your foundation that you're built off of is surveillance. But you built a little safe zone in the attic. So you take your little ladder and the surveillance chain and the cameras can see you going up the ladder and they see you in the attic. They don't know what you do in the attic, but when you come back down, they ding you because they saw you leave the attic. Now this is layer 2. So we've got, like Tornado Cash, Pulse Chain, Zcash, Dash, those are those kinds, layer 2. And then we have layer 1s, which are private by default, mandatorily private with all their privacy protocols, and in some cases encryption at layer 1, which are Monero, Pirate Chain, and Dero. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about those in more in depth, unless you guys have any kind of things to share right now.
Well, I just want to say that we've tried to touch on this as much as possible. That that really the only way to really have privacy, even if you have privacy tokens, you're gonna have to look at how you access into that network. And to me, it's the most important part of this entire process. And it's a form of laundering, is what it is. You're trying to clean yourself of the petrodollar system, which is going to insist itself upon you that at some point in time you're going to have to make a CBDC transaction. But here we are, all pro crypto, because we believe in crypto. This is what the government will be saying. We believe in crypto. All we're asking is that whenever you do any kind of sale in the taxable states, that it's converted into CBDCs long enough for the transaction to take place, and that's all it will take. That's all it will take, unless more pirate groups have enough spunk and tribalism to create something that is effectively easy, tangibly enough easy to enter into and to use it to navigate inside this CBDC world. And that's a huge task, is all I'm saying. It's a huge task. And I think ultimately it will be an open source solution, which is, I think all of us are on that same. This is what I mean by the tribalism is good, because the tribalism still works inside of an open source system. It really does. You just need the right tribe. and once the tribe is on the right stance, everyone has that same open source perspective in it, because they're not at a loss for electricity, so they can afford to be generous with the potlatch that really makes open source technology like this work. So go with this wherever you need to, Kalina. We've got 11 minutes left. Josh, I know that you may have to actually squeak out of here.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'll probably turn off my video from here, and I will try and listen to what Kalina has to say, because this has been fascinating. So thank you, and nice chatting with you.
Oh yeah, you too. Oh, I'm so sad. 11 minutes. Yikes. Okay.
Yeah, you've got 11 minutes, Kalina, and but we can always have you back. And before you do that, I want you to take a deep breath and realize you don't have to convey everything. You've already met the vibe check here. I've got your links here for people to check out more stuff, and just take your time and enjoy it.
For sure. For sure. Thank you. No, it's an honor, James. I love your work. I mean, yeah, I could get into that, but I only have 11 minutes.
Yeah, let's stop that. Tell me more.
Okay. Yeah. So we've got Monero and the CryptoNote protocol, and they use obfuscation. I think you guys probably touched on it, but just briefly.
Please.
So that just means you basically, how we see the world being psyoped right now, they can't hide back the truth. So instead, they flood you with so much misinformation, and you have to wade through everything to find the truth. That's obfuscation. That's Monero, but it's all written in plain text, not ciphertext. So right now, there's no smart contracts on Monero. All it can be used for is fungible cash. But hey, you know what? It is doing such a great service for the world of privacy, because people trust Monero. You know, it pumps whenever they block the Canadian truckers, or, you know, in Russia, Monero pumps, and thank God. All right. So Pirate Chain uses zero knowledge proofs. Well, that is basically also written in plain text. It's not encrypted, but it is a privacy protocol. And basically it's like, you don't know what's going on. The blockchain doesn't really know, but you have to depend on an algorithm. And in speaking of tribalism, the only thing that I would say to these two things is, with these, there is no third key, right? So if somebody took, like, let's say, you know, Fluffy Pony, who is, I believe, just handed himself over to the US Marshals, who was involved with the development of Monero. If they tortured this guy enough and he gave them the algorithm, well, guess what? The Monero would have a government backdoor because they would be able to decrypt any of your messages. Same with Pirate Chain. And so that leads me to Dero, which is a layer 1, but everything is homomorphically encrypted. Plus, they use both of those. They use rocket bulletproofs, which is somewhat similar but more lightweight to what Pirate Chain uses. And they use obfuscation with the ring signature up to 16. But they don't even need that. That's just like an extra icing on the cake. And why I'm so bullish on Dero is because everything is written in ciphertext. It's the only one that we have of its kind available today. It's encrypted. So not only do you need a decryption key, but the whole thing is encrypted. So you have that algorithm, plus each person has their own key. And with that being said, they could find the developers of Dero and torture them, but they don't have the information. So this creates one of the first truly trustless scenarios that we've seen in the world of crypto. And why I'm so in love with and bullish on Dero, it's the only one of its kind that does smart contracts. So everything that Ethereum can do, Dero does, but faster with less gas fees and just way better because it's encrypted. So anyways, the whole ecosystem of Dero is phenomenal. It's at its early stages. A lot of things are still in alpha and being developed, and the possibilities are really endless. But I think we're going to see a lot of solutions come from the Dero ecosystem, and they've got a lot of really cool projects that I can't speak to right now for the sake of time. But I just think that it's really challenging to get into Dero because it's really built off of a system that's verify, don't trust. And you have to really do your research. I mean, it's even hard to find the Dero Discord link, which I think I've sent to you in our bullets, but that's the beauty of it, because I think that it's each one of our sacred responsibilities to get on the back end of things and research. If they threw out an EMP tomorrow, and they shut down all computers and all the internet, if you're on Dero and you understand how to run a CLI wallet, you can still transact and you can still send the world's most encrypted messages and run whatever there is that in terms of smart contracts that there is on that platform. You just have to know how to write a little bit of command line, which I've been so pleased I've gotten to learn a little tiny snippet here and there.
Probably the biggest threat that projects like this face is simply how effective they are at encryption. And that the more effective you are at encryption, the harder it's going to be across the board for you to begin using that. I think once you're in it, there's really nothing anyone can do to stop those transactions from happening. However, getting into that subway system is going to require you being on the street at some point and entering into some sort of hole, and they are going to watch you enter that hole, and they're going to watch you come out of that hole. And that really is the biggest challenge we have to date. You mentioned earlier, and I just want my audience to know what you meant by that, that when Monero pumps, it's usually pumping because some kind of news in the privacy world happens, and sometimes that news is even bad. Monero gets beat up on all the time because it has teeth. That's precisely why so many exchanges have these protocols in place, because they're getting pressure to say, hey man, stop promoting these cryptocurrencies that have teeth. That's not something that we want. We want everyone to believe in this docile, where everything's exposed, where everything's on the ledger, where everything is out in the open, which also is beautiful, by the way. I think ultimately projects like I think Zcash probably, these projects that have the option of being encrypted is a temporary solution right now that's allowing the entire privacy coin market to even stay alive inside the normie world, if that makes sense, where you kind of need these half-ass hybrid tokens just because they're at least allowed in the mall, where they can wander through the food court and try and give away free samples, even though it looks like we're the drug dealers that are out back behind the mall. They're like, dude, if you guys come out of the mall, there's like some of the best chicken fingers out there. It's like this whole barbecue. You got to trust me. And that is a necessary threshold where the sheep are going to say, I don't trust you. I like it here inside the mall. It's safe and warm here, and everything has ketchup, right? So it's I think that the embracing the fact that this is a minority right now is actually a chance to give it more strength, to embrace the tribalism is what I'm trying to say of this thing, and to find a comfort in the camaraderie of participating in projects like this, if that makes sense. And this is why I think it feels so good to be so involved in the project early on, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes I almost feel like the world, at least my communities, aren't ready for
Yeah,
something like what Darrow is. Because, you know, when we talk about other projects, like none of the other projects are encrypted. They only use privacy protocols, but they're written in plain text,
right,
you
right.
know? So, yeah, I mean, there's right now in the world of Darrow, I get to observe, and I think I'm like the only girl in all of Darrow. And um, I get to watch and learn, and those poor guys must be so confused as to why I'm even interested. And I can't explain to them in any logical term that like, hey, yeah, like source put it in my brain. So I'm here, just deal with it, you know, because they're just
Well,
not going to compute.
yeah,
But it's just really special getting to observe what everybody's doing and the spirit of how they work together and how brilliant these people are. And like how much like they offer to humanity just because they believe that it is our human god-given unalienable right to transact privately outside of the confines of government with their you know their tyrannical views of what we should and shouldn't do. And I'm
oh,
really
that's
inspired.
beautifully said. Absolutely beautifully said. I hate to end this, but with those perfect words, this is actually the perfect time to end this cast for now. I have placed your link tree in the chat for people. I will be putting this in the description. I encourage everyone listening to give Kalina a look see. And if she'd like to come back, I'd love to have her back more again in the future. And thank you so much for joining us today, Kalina.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
That is link true. You know, if you guys know Linktree, I'm going to spell it for you though. It's linktr.ee/Kalina Lux. It's capital K, capital L,
Oh,
Kalina Lux. Was that wrong?
I sent you a whole list of links
Yeah, I have
for like
no
Darrow.
no emails at all. I think maybe you have the wrong
Fantastic.
email address, but if you could either reply to the Zoom or the Zoom email I sent, but I don't have any links. All I could do was find off Instagram this thing. So if you could type that into the chat right now, I don't know if you have access to type into the chat
Yes,
during
I
the
sure
music, but if you do
do.
that, clean, I think it'll help a lot. That way people